Welcome back to How Soccer Explains Leadership. Thanks again for being a part of the conversation. Thank you for engaging all that we get to do here. I know Paul and I'm Phil Dark, by the way, if this is your first time listening, the host, and Paul Jobson, my co-host and brother in arms. Paul, how you doing, man?
Doing well, Phil. Things have been going well here in Waco and with SRUSA. I think we talked about it last time, starting up there. And what I'm realizing with that, Phil, is that I'm really enjoying rebuilding relationships. When
Yeah.
you're a coach and you have those day-to-day relationships and you're helping kids through, the ups and downs of, daily activity when it comes to school and soccer and all that. So just reconnecting with current high school kids that are preparing to go to college and even some current college kids that are kind of struggling with the demands of college and just trying to be that kind of that ear for them to listen to them and a voice to speak into them has been a lot of fun. Kind of getting back into that without the game planning and strategizing and the pressure to win is a new light on life. But no, things are good here, man. How about for you and the Dark family? What's going on?
Well, I just love that that you are getting back into that. I did see your post the other day for National Daughters Day, since you have four sons, and you posted
Yeah.
a fuzzy picture of a team that was very nondescript, which was very appropriate because that was really cool. And I do know your heart for that. So it's super cool. For a little bit there was going to be some rumors starting about a coming out of retirement to coach again, but then you threw that at the end about not having all the other stuff. So I think you put those to bed. I think we're
That's a
good
bit of
there.
a little tease, I guess, maybe you'd
Yeah,
say. Not
yeah,
intended, but
yeah,
post
yeah,
a
yeah,
blurry picture of a bunch of girls, talk about National Daughters Day, and then lead in with like how much I enjoy the
yeah.
relationships, and then bam,
Boom.
don't have
Yeah.
to win games on the weekend.
Exactly, exactly. Cut it off there. Cut it off. And especially, I was watching a game yesterday, and a 89th minute goal to lose 1-0 for the team that I was, pulling for. So that those are
Mm.
always, gut wrenchers. But anyway, doing well in the dark house. Just sent my two daughters off to Hawaii for YWAM to start that off again for Malia and for Savannah to get going there. And my son's still kicking it around there at Biola. That's been fun to watch him. And so I'm feeling that pressure to win on the weekends, even though I have nothing to do with it. I feel like I do. And as a parent,
Yep.
you're always like, well, why did they do this? And there's all those things that I don't ever call the coach and ask him. But it's always there. But it's just really good time right now. We're getting ready. We get a couple weeks. We get to go visit them in Hawaii. Can't wait for that family trip. In the
Awesome.
meantime, Justin went off, my 12-year-old, and broke his elbow playing soccer. He got, as he says, the keeper had a late tackle and took him out. And I said, yeah, but that's happened how many times in your life? And it's just this fluky thing. But it is what it is. He's out for
And
three
he's not
weeks
going to get
and
any sympathy from his goalkeeper dad either, is he? That's your
100%.
boss. Yeah, man. Poor
100%. He went
kid.
in there. That's his fault, man. It
Yep.
was an indoor game, and but it was freaky. He put his hand down in a way that typically would not typically break a wrist, not an elbow, but it did. It broke the elbow. Fortunately, no surgery. Fortunately, he's only in the cast for 3 weeks, because to take that kid out of being able to do anything for longer than a day you know is married. But it was a total small gift that it's not a surgery, not a long term in that cast. So good stuff
Good.
there. But today we have a new friend of mine, and I'm excited to get him on here today. We got Dan Russell. He's also, if you go back and listen to that Phil Smith interview, he knows Phil Smith too over there in the UK. It's not that everyone in the UK knows each other. It just so happens these guys do know each other. And so
Seems to
don't
me
think
like everybody knows everybody over there,
I
Phil.
know that's true. It probably is true. It probably actually is the case. So, but we got Dan Russell. Dan wears a few different hats we're going to get into. I'm going to let him tell us about those hats that he's wearing. You can also read the bio if you want to know beforehand and the suspense is killing you. But Dan, how are you doing, man?
Hey Phil, hey Paul. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Really, really excited to get this up and running. But yeah, it's Friday. It's the weekend. So I actually turned myself into dad's taxis for this weekend with the kids. So yeah, looking forward to getting my sons to football, watching a bit of football myself, and getting out there and doing a bit of scouting as well at the same time. So all good here, Phil. Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because now that I talked about sending my daughters off to Hawaii, with my daughters going off to Hawaii went my Uber drivers and my taxi service. So I'm a little getting back into that. So it's definitely not
Hey,
something
this
that's a
this
good
could be an
part of it.
episode. This could be an episode on Dad's taxi cab confessions because I'm solo dadding this weekend too with my
Oh yeah.
four. So this
Yeah.
interview is going a whole new direction. Sorry, Dan, forget what
Wow.
we talked
Wow.
about. This is Dad's taxi cab confessions for caring for
Yeah,
footballers. All right,
the script is out the window.
Yeah, right. Totally, totally, totally. Well, our scripts are always out the window if you listen to any of the episodes. So I
pretty
don't think there's
quickly.
such a thing. But one thing we do, it's not scripted. But we love to hear your story. Just briefly share, how you develop your passion for soccer, how you develop your passion for leadership, coaching. You talked about scouting, and really how what was that path to where you are today? What does that look like?
Yeah, so just a very, very simple start in terms of granddad, dad played football at a decent level. Naturally just kind of came to being out playing with friends from a very young age, and quickly developing. It wasn't just the football, soccer aspect. It was sort of any sport really. Cricket had a good decision later on in life to choose going, into a good level of cricket or a good level of football. But yeah, from when I can remember, I've just been playing football. My dad being the main driver behind that, taking me to games all up and down the country. To the point of being obviously in the academy system myself with Burnley, and having a number of years with them, which was fantastic. But yeah, I think it was just in where I'm from in the UK, a small town just outside of Burnley. Obviously it was just everybody was doing it outside on the streets, kicking a ball around, and you just got a natural, sort of knack for just being a little bit better than anyone else. It just kind of came natural to me in a sense, and yeah, it's probably just been ingrained into our family. My sons are exactly the same. Both love football. There's a massive diverse of actual cultures of football teams. So we've got Burnley, Liverpool, Newcastle. So there's kind of a bit of a diverse there with the teams aspect because my mum's from Newcastle, my dad's from Burnley, and Liverpool was in the mix of the uncles and the grandparents of the supporting that team when they was doing really well um, back in the old days. Well, so so yeah, it's hard to describe really. It just became natural to me that I had a ball at my feet all the time, and yeah, just the friends around me as well, all big into football. We would play it on the back streets, on the car parks, on the fields, anywhere we could go. We get a football and just play football all the time. So yeah, it was just ingrained from a family aspect. My sister was a fantastic sportswoman as well. She actually swam for her district level as well. So we had a whole rounder of sort of sportsmen and women in the family.
Yeah, and then so from there, you talked about playing the academy. Where'd that take you? And then how'd you end up scouting? How'd you end up now working with UA92? And tell us a little bit. We'll get into that later on today, but just kind of share a little bit about what that's about. How'd you go from playing all the time to now helping players find teams and really just helping young people? You also have a scouting app you're working on. What is that? How'd you get to all that stuff?
Yeah, good question. I think sort of being in the academy setup for quite a while, it got me to a point where, unfortunately, I had to make. Well, unfortunately, a decision was brought upon me at the age of 19. I broke my leg twice in the same year, which ultimately sort of kind of took me away from that sort of standard, that level of football. All I sort of ever knew growing up was football. Wasn't really for the academic side of life. I had sort of ADHD. I was dyslexic, so the neurodiverse aspect of my life made a massive impact of my decision making, and I just thought I wanted to be a footballer. There was no plan B, and unfortunately, I had to make a plan B quickly at the age of 19. And at that point, breaking a leg twice in the same year, and my father passing away at the same time. I think a lot of decisions, a lot of what are you going to do now? It just became apparent that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. My mum, God bless her, she installed hard working and be the best you can be, with whatever life, throws at you. God's got a sort of a pathway for us all, so to say. And I sort of kind of made the decision to go and play non-league, and played non-league at a decent level for a few years, while sort of kind of, bobbing in and out of different jobs, not really finding something that was right for me. But any job I actually went into, I wanted to be the best. I wanted to, make sure I was working my way up the food chain in that position, because, I guess it's a competitive edge you have as a sportsman. But I was quite lucky then, kind of about 5 years later, to get scouted to go and play professional football in Australian State Division 2 with Geelong Rangers. Rangers were fantastic. Spent a few years there. Played some fantastic places across Melbourne in the sort of kind of south of Australia. But I was a young dad. My sons were already born. They didn't come with me. I had to make the decision to go there on my own. Just because of the accommodations and the actual contract that was in place. It wasn't sort of cooperating with the family aspect. It was just me. And 2 years into that, I decided to come back. And I thought, I'm probably not going to be playing where I want to be. So what can I do? And whilst I was there, I got a part-time job coaching with Geelong Grammar School, really prestige grammar school over in Australia. Prince Charles, or King Charles, now went to its sister campus. So it was what I like to call Hogwarts on steroids. To be fair, it was a great campus. They had some fantastic overarching sort of athletes in terms of rugby. They called it footy, so the Aussie rules footy, soccer, rowing, archery. It was all there, swimming, diving. Fantastic facilities, and I learned a lot from a lot of people over there, and I found that sort of that passion for coaching and teaching. And when I came back to the UK, I was like, well, okay, I like the taste of that. I've got my qualifications behind me in terms of my level 1, level 2, just at that sort of UA92 license, and thought, well, what can I do now? How can I pass on my experiences, my lessons learned from the last sort of 5 to 6 years? And I thought, right, okay, coaching. Maybe doing some sports coaching. So I ended up going into a coaching role for a couple of years with a company called Fundamental Coaching. The owner was a friend of mine, and it really opened my eyes to the world of sort of working with young pupils from sort of primary school to secondary school. It was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. But got to a point where I was like, okay, so I really love the coaching aspect, but me teaching kids how to dance in the dance aspect just wasn't for me. I just don't. I guess my dad moves, my robotic moves just wasn't right, and I wanted to really go and push myself to coach specifically athletes in the world of soccer, in the world of football, because that's where my passion lied. And I got to a point where my sons were growing up, and I was like having to make a decision whether I'm going to go and can I get this dream job within an academy, which I had a couple of jobs offered to me at the time, like Morecambe Football Club was one of them, or go back to Burnley and do some stuff around with their development centre. And I also had a son who was also playing at a very good level of football, and it was a big decision whether to sort of kind of get the dream job or get a job that pays well and can I have that family time. And I decided to go with the family time. That's really important to me. And to sort of kind of get to where we are right now, Phil, I had to go through a lot of changes within the world of my career. Basically, I had to take a whole entire new change on career. I had a career change. Basically, went into IT recruitment, and it definitely was like the Wolf of Wall Street scenario. I kid you not. The nickname for us was the Wolf Pack. So it was a case of learning a new trade in sort of IT recruitment and taking that forward. And then this actually really leads onto the leadership aspect of how I found myself leaning towards team leader roles, managers roles, and helping people move in the right direction. So I took all that sort of that wealth of knowledge of coaching and put it into recruitment. My dad told me a long time ago, he said, go and look at the best coaches, go and steal their best ideas and use them for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's best practice. How can you transfer that into everything that you're doing in your days of, your day-to-day activity. So when I went into this IT recruitment role, I remember asking the director who are the two best consultants in the team, and it was two ladies. And I was like, right, can I go sit next to them? And I literally just learned everything, shadowed them, listened to their calls, went on their meetings. I learned so much valuable things from these two consultants because they'd done it for so long. These were industry experts. So why not go and learn from them? Mm-hmm. And probably spent a good part of 10 years, between eight and 9 years within IT recruitment. And then through that period, it sort of kind of, COVID was on its way. And when COVID hit, I got put on furlough. I'd sort of kind of moved a little bit into the world of apprenticeships and digital bootcamps. And whilst I was on furlough, I was like, what can I do? What can I do to now give back even, more insight and experience in terms of what do I do? So I decided to do a couple of scouting courses, talent ID courses in match analysis, player analysis, opponent analysis with the PFSA. And lo and behold, got a gig at Burnley Football Club as a scout, which was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. I spent 2.5 years with them, coaching in their development centre, out every weekend, finding the next Jay Rodriguez. You probably don't know who he is. Is a guy that I play football with. His brother, kind of know him from the area that we grew up around, and he still plays for Burnley. Right now, he's one of the strikers at Burnley, and we wanted to go out and find local talent for Burnley FC. And yeah, it got to a point where 2.5 years down the line, I recently decided, I think it's time for a change. That change kind of came in two parts, really. One, in terms of a job, full-time job, going to UA92, working for the class of 92. So Man United's class of 92, Gary Neville, Phil Neville, Nicky Butt, Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, just minus David Beckham, basically. And, at the same time, transitioning and going over to Liverpool FC as well as one of their scouts. And through all that, played non-league football for a number of years with a couple of different teams up in the northwest of England. And it also helped my sons develop on their pathway in terms of going to primary school, high school, and football as well. And then there's all the Daryse stuff, which I'll probably tell you a little bit later on. But that is me in a kind of a nutshell, to be fair, Phil and Paul.
Yeah. No, that's great. And that's so... it reminds me of when my kids ask me what I do, right? There's so many moving parts, and it's so cool. I mean, you're almost like a double agent working for the class of 92 and a scout for Liverpool. Like that I'm surprised is allowed in, or do they not know? Are we outing you right now?
Yeah, between us three, they actually still don't know I'm scouting for Liverpool.
Yeah,
so.
okay, all right. Well, hopefully they don't listen to this. I'll keep... This will probably be the one episode those guys don't listen to. I'm sure they're listening to every other episode of this podcast. So, and then the other thing was that you skip the non-league. One of the non-league teams, in fact, we talked about Phil Smith, is Aussie United. He tried to get you there, yeah, and you turned him down, I hear.
Yeah,
yeah.
Funny story with Phil. So I was sort of kind of in that recruitment stage, and I sort of kind of came across a company that he was like working with called Rizzle, and they did a lot around virtual reality, on helping find players and train players and scout players. So people in disprivileged sort of countries, they would send off this sort of piece of kit. They would do the analysis and basically the assessment through this virtual reality gear, and basically would get a score, and then it can go to scouts in that way. And I was just so really blown away by this technology. We're talking a few years ago now. I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. And I kept reading this article, and this guy's name, Phil Smith, does this. Phil Smith is a part of this. And I'm thinking, who is this Phil Smith? I need to meet him. I need to know who he is. So I did this big piece. I did this big email in terms of how I can actually put them in touch with other clubs. I know this person and that person, and then eventually Phil reached out to me and was like, Phil, and actually his boss was like, Dan, this is one of the best, most insightful emails we've ever had from a recruitment agency. Let's meet up. I was like, amazing, let's do it. And yeah, lo and behold, sort of had a couple of conversations with Phil, and obviously you know what Phil Smith's like. He's a very infectious person. He's very bubbly type of guy, and we just clicked straight away. And then as we got talking, it was like, so what are you doing at the weekend? Oh, I've got a game for my non-league side. I'm playing for West Didsbury and Chorlton, which are in Manchester. And he was like, okay, tell me more. So he's telling me a bit about. So he started talking about the football aspect, and I played at a decent level. And this, well, I've actually just started running this team. I don't know if you've heard of him before. And I'm like, and he's like, I'm like, oh yeah, I know who they are. They're over sort of kind of Yorkshire, sort of Leeds way. And he's like, well, they train on these days. Do you think you could make it? And he was like, he almost made a decision that I was going on the training. I was like, honestly, Phil, I'd love to, but I'm under contract. I can't. I'm actually contracted to West Didsbury and Chorlton, and actually, it was like 2 hours drive away from where I was, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you did Australia already. You don't want to go too far. You don't want to travel anymore.
No. I mean, one of the games in Australia was like a 5-hour drive, and it was just like, dreaded that. But yeah, Phil's a great guy. Yes, yeah. It's funny. It's funny how you meet people and how they sort of link in with each other. But
totally. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And that really goes to real quick. I want you to just, give maybe like a 1 minute or 2 minute, just the power of networking. You talked earlier, just a great lesson earlier that you talked about with like sitting in with those meetings. But obviously networking has been a big part of where you got today. But can you just give a quick, 1 to 2 minute, just what is the power of networking for people out there so they can, people that don't necessarily do it naturally?
Yeah, this is probably my strongest part of who I am, my core strength. Like I said before, I left school with no GCSEs. I had to do a lot of like sort of late night education later on in life. But the one thing that always came natural was, I can speak to anybody. Even my girlfriend says I need to stop talking to random strangers in the street and things like this. But you never know. You never know who this person is. You never know who you're going to meet. And one thing that I always learned from, especially from the recruitment aspect of things, went to networking events and went to any events, was just, and this comes from my dad, to be fair, just the power of being polite, having good manners, just putting that hand out and saying, hi, my name's Dan, what do you do? Being interested in them. I was always told, do this sort of 80-20 approach with people. 80% they're talking, 20% you're talking. You're listening for a big amount of time, and they appreciate that you're listening. And I would honestly say, if I didn't go to these networking events, if I didn't actually, sometimes break a bit of my comfort zone of I'm just going to put myself out there. I'm going to go into this circle of people talking. I'm just going to introduce myself and see who, wants to know a little bit about myself. And I generally believe if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have played at a decent level of football in terms of non-league, and meeting the right people and meeting new friends. And then, the sort of life cycle of someone goes to another club. I can trust Dan. I know his ability on the pitch. Let's bring him and we'll go that way. In terms of work, the right person at the right time was there. It was my new boss. I had a guy called Andy Lord. Went to a networking event, shook hands with him, asked him a little bit about his business. He loved the fact that I was really engaged with him in the sort of the Q&A and panel. 2 years later down the line, I tell this story to a lot of people. 2 years later down the line, he's actually offered me a job, and I'm going into a job in apprenticeships. And I've gone from being a director to a head of employability, and I'm teaching people how to have these great employability skills. And that job just came from me going to a networking event, looking online, just connecting with people on LinkedIn, on Instagram, or whatever it may be, and just asking a little bit about them and listening to them and what they've got to say, and looking at that collaboration. And again, where I am right now with UA92, the people that I met around me, weirdly, a friend of mine where I used to work was dating a girl. This girl's sister is now my boss. It's crazy. And just the friendships we've made. And it was just a case of this network that I've built around me are people that I can trust and I can rely on, but they've pointed me in the right direction. The information, the advice, the guidance that these people are giving me are fantastic. So my advice to anyone is have a quick look what's on some events, just in that area that you're interested in. It could be sport, it could be game, it could be IT, it could be just generally anything, and see what the people are there. And and don't be frightened to just basically introduce yourself. And the one thing you just need to do is just be polite. have good manners, just shake their hand and just actively listen. But for me, networking has got me where I am today. If I didn't, it's one thing I always say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I just leveraged off people, just being polite. Hi, we haven't really spoken before, or, I've seen you at this event. I'd love to know more a little bit about you. Let's have a chat. And, effectively, me and you, Phil, kind of very similar like that. I came across your podcast. I came across you speaking to Phil Smith. And I wanted to know you. You look like a great guy. You look like a really nice person. I want to know more about you because it might be somewhere down the line that we're doing something amazing together, and we positively create an environment for somebody else that can thrive and go the distance. And that's generally where I feel like networking should be. You're scratching somebody's back to scratch your back, but also ultimately create a really positive environment at the same time.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, like that. I've heard it said too, like it's not what you know, it's who you know, but I've also heard it's also who knows you, right? It's not what you know, but it's who knows you, to take that a little bit further. Then I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about scouting. I think people who don't scout, who maybe don't even coach, I think scouting is a whole nother world that I think people have misconceptions about. I don't think people fully understand scouting, and I don't think it even matters what sport it is. I mean, I know guys that have been baseball scouts, and I just think it's a different world that people don't really understand what that looks like. I'd like for you to maybe take us through a little bit about a couple things. What do you look for when you're scouting? Okay, that's one thing I want you to talk about. How is that different from when you're evaluating players, right? When you're a coach, right? So there's scouting. Like if I'm going out as a university coach and I'm evaluating a player to come play for me, it's a little bit different when I'm going out to scout for maybe what you're doing at a professional level, even at the different ages of scouting. And how much do you need to see of a player? Just kind of take us through that process of what scouting is and what are some of the things that are misconceptions that people probably don't really even understand about the full details of what it means to really be a scout and what it takes.
Yeah, it's funny because there's fine margins between the scouting and the coaching aspect, but then on certain areas, but then there is the big gap in terms of as a scout, you are looking for the characteristics, not necessarily the technique, not necessarily the physical attributes. It's almost the ability to, what are they like as a person in the team? I mean, it would be great if you could actually see the kid from when you have a snapshot of what their day's been like. Where have they come from? Have they had a great day at school? Have they, and no disrespect to any families, but what is their family situation, the house situation? Where do they come from? Where do they live? Because I look back at myself, I'm actually at my parents' now. I'm actually at mum's house now in Briarfield, which is just outside of Burnley, and it's still a very council deprived area. And I always remembered it as in I had a really good upbringing. And I can't actually thank my mum and dad for that. But 2-3 houses around the corner, I don't know where, the kids were having a serious sort of like kind of drama incidents that really affects them going onto the playing field. And I would love to see a little bit about that when that kid turns up on the football pitch. Because you've got to understand that, has this kid had a bad day at school? Has this had an amazing day at school? And that really does affect them when they are playing football. But it's not just obviously the four corners of the football aspect of what you're looking for with the scouting aspect. And you want to look at how they are adapting to new team players. There might be a couple of new players that have turned up who are actually fighting for their position today. So how do they react to that? How do they react to maybe going 1-0 down in a game? How do they react to someone giving them a little bit of abuse from their own teammates, or even the coach as well? Doesn't really has like a level 1 badge and just is there as a volunteer. And God bless grassroots scouts, they're the unsung heroes of football. So there's a lot to think about. But for me, I call it the spark. If anyone asks me in terms of what you look for in a player, it's called the spark. That's why I reference it. And the spark isn't, going past three players and smashing a ball in the top corner. It's leadership, it's communication on the pitch, it's the decision making, it's the understanding the roles and responsibilities when they get to maybe a little bit older, when offside comes into play, or they actually go to 11 aside. When they're really young, is it how much do they enjoy being on the pitch? How much do they enjoy being spoken to by a coach by saying, right, today, guys, we're going to try and do this, we're going to try and do that. Yes, there's ability of turn of pace, ability to have that ability to manipulate the ball and go past players. Definitely, there's all of that as well. But I think how you can sort of confuse the scouting and the coach element is the tactical information of what a coach would be bringing to the day for that kid to take that onto the pitch and implement it the way that you want it to go. And as a scout, you don't hear that from the coach. You don't hear that in terms of the players. You've got to go off in terms of what you're hearing around you and the environment that they're in. And you're not looking for the all-rounded well player. You'll never, ever get that. You can look at Ronaldo, you can look at Messi. You might say they're well-rounded, but they're still two different athletes. So you'll never get that. And it is looking for the ability to watch them in that split second and have an insight, a gut feeling, and the potential to think, you know what, I understand where Liverpool's academy players are at. I understand, so you're looking at your benchmark, so I understand where the academy players are at. I understand where the development centre players are at. And now I have a good feeling of where the players at. Can they go the distance? Can they go the mile? And definitely from a scouting point of view, what we need to try and look for is that person, have they got the mental resilience to have knockbacks but carry on fighting and go through, go the full distance. From a coaching aspect, it's a difficult one really, because if you're looking at a very younger age and it's there for enjoyment, you don't want to basically plow them with information. You don't want to sort of you're almost teaching them the fundamentals of the game, and you want to coach them in a way that they get a lot out of that. Because, they might just be doing it fun. They might not want to really go the distance. They might not really want to do it. And the coach aspect of things is you're bringing a structured element to a fun environment. Whereas a scout, you're looking for the resilience, the mindset, the person that can go all the way. And, they're very two within themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great stuff in there. A couple of things I want to pull out of there so that people don't miss is that, I don't want to say anybody, but most people can show up to a field and recognize who the best players are, right? In air quotes, who's the most technical, who's talented, who doesn't lose the ball off their foot, who has a great strike. But kind of what you're talking about is, okay, how do you then separate those players? Okay, who's the kid that goes to find the coach at the other field and grabs the bag of balls to bring it because they recognize, hey, we need balls to warm up. Coach isn't here yet. I'm going to take leadership. I'm going to get the team kind of ready while coach is coming from another pitch. Who are the kids that are, building up their teammates? How well do they talk to their coach? Like if they take a tongue from the coach, how do they respond? Those sorts of things play into the scouting aspect of, we used to watch kids, how they interacted with their parents as they're walking up to a pitch. Like, man, that kid's a brat. Like they're going to talk to their parents like that,
Yeah.
You got to be careful with that. But the personality, plays big into scouting, right? So from a coach's standpoint, you're recognizing talent and you got to know who to put on the field at a time and the training environment. But a scout really, if they're the ones recommending players, it's kind of on you because you brought this player like, hey, yeah, they're really talented, but they can't hang in this level because they can't be coached, right? They can't be coached. They can't handle the stress of the environment, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's the social aspect, the leadership aspects. It's really important because it does effectively go down to, who has that sponge of a mindset to take the information in and really apply that on the pitch at a very young age. And you can see. I know. I mean, I've seen it personally with teams where typically the coach's son is the one who reacts the worst because unfortunately he feels the amount of pressure because it's my dad as the coach And typically 9 times out of 10, they are, they are very good players, but yet their attitude towards the coach, their dad, other players, it's an expectation of them to, be the role model player. And sometimes that's not right to give that to that child. It's just, it's unfair. But yeah, it's like I said before, if you could have the insight to how their day's been and going, would be fantastic. And then, you'll get the players who I think it's quite apparent now with academy football and maybe a little bit lower than that. There's a lot of coaches that have like a military drill operational sort of sense to their team. I need help with the balls, the water bottles. Can someone go get me the corns? And you're there to have a good time, but there's that mutual respect, which is fantastic, and that's how it should be done. And it should be done with the referees as well. Football's awful for that. Rugby's fantastic, but football's awful for it. I'm awful for it. I've been that guy. But but yeah, it's fine margins, but there's a big gap between you're not there to coach and influence the person. Because when I go scouting, I don't go in my Burnley or my Liverpool gear. I never do that purposely, because I don't want a kid to look at me and go, oh wow, he's wearing a Liverpool badge on his top. He's got the full big coat, he's got the lanyard on. Right, I'm going to change my game now from being a team player to an individual show off that will never pass the ball. And as coaches, you're actually there to remind the players that we've got a job to do today. As much as having fun, we've got a job to do today. We want to try and win, and yeah, I mean, winning is not everything, but as you get older, it becomes more apparent that kids just love to win and have that competitive edge. But as a scout, you're not there to coach them. You're not there to give them advice. You're there to monitor them. And you touch on in terms of how we do sort of look at that progression on players sometimes. I might see the spark and think, actually, who's the team that they're playing? What division are they from? Where are they in the league? And I might have to come back and watch them because they're playing the bottom of the league when they're sort of mid-table. Let's have another watch of this player when they are playing maybe a top 2 team and seeing how they react to that as well. So there's so many different aspects to making sure that, is this player right for the academy? We've got to go on an 8-week trial in a YD8? Or is it a case of we put them in the development centre and we monitor them and we train them in the culture and the ways of the club? Or is it a case of we put just kind of an amber light on them and we put it on a bit of a slow burner? We'll come watch these guys in another week or 2 and see how they get on in different scenarios.
Yeah. I like you shedding light on that, because I think a lot of people think of scouts and they think, okay, they're the people that show up in the field, they take a couple notes, they pass it on to a coach, they decide if they want to play or not, and then the scout moves on to another field, right? That's all it is. So I appreciate you shedding some light on that, because it's not a throw off for sure. It's definitely an important piece to the game.
Yeah, definitely. There's a whole process and procedure behind it, to be fair. But it's great that scouts are out and about. I think there's a massive shift probably about 20 years ago, where there wasn't enough scouts in local areas. And what you started finding was a lot of teams back in the day was looking at international players coming abroad. Obviously Brexit has caused a massive issue with sort of looking at international talent. So, obviously, the younger you go, you're looking for your local talent, because actually local talent is the only talent you can actually find. It's actually in the rules that they have to be within 1 hour or 1 hour, 30 minutes within the training facilities. So it's not a burden on the parents in terms of fuel costs and things like that as well.
Yeah, there's so much to scouting, right? And we've talked about that quite a bit here. There's also this app that you got, and I just want to really quickly describe. And I keep trying to figure out how to pronounce it, and I know you struggle. It's Daryse. I know that's what it's shortened from, so I know that part. But it's like Daryse.
That's the one.
Daryse. There we go. Daryse. Can you just quickly describe the app? We don't have a ton of time to get into all the stuff that I know we'd want to talk about it, but share just quickly what the app is, and then how the listeners, whether it's parents, coaches, scouts themselves might want to be using it.
Yeah, definitely. So Daryse is a scouting platform. Basically, players are able to showcase their talent on the app. And the owner, Jonas Salah, is an ex-professional goalkeeper that played in the Bundesliga, and he wanted to create a community. The app's kind of like an Instagram feel to it, but the community isn't just worldwide. It's actually it's specifically worldwide, but specifically in the industry of soccer. So the people in the community are officials from scouts, managers, coaches, sporting directors, agents from all different levels of soccer, from the Bundesliga to the A-League, worldwide. And he had this vision where he wanted to look at the power of networking. Again, networking, how powerful it is networking with the right people, and put you in the limelight and give you that chance to be scouted from Brazil all the way into Germany, or from Africa into the UK. It doesn't matter where you are. We wanted to create an app where it gave you them chances. And we've got some great testimonials. A kid from Holland, Jay Luca, has just signed a 5-year deal with Lecce in Italy, who are in Serie A. There's a kid from Australia, goalkeeper Nicholas. He signed for German level Division 3 team. And it was such a great concept that I was just wanted to get involved with. The owners actually spotted my son and wanted to obviously give him a trial, but Brexit and the visa situation came into play. But we've been contacted by many scouts on there who are interested in my son, and since I've come on board, I wanted to go bigger. I wanted to go better. I wanted to go and do something that could actually change a lot of people's lives. And Daryse it's not anything new that is out there. I'm going to be completely honest and transparent. There are other apps out there, scouting apps out there, but we want to give it a real, authentic, genuine look to the world of helping players move in the right direction. And the part of that was, well, what can we do to help all types of players? So we came up with the concept of the Daryse EPA, and that is the EPA stands for Elite Player Aftercare. So it's built upon 4 pillars in terms of the clubs being compliant with the league and rule regulations, mental health and well-being for players, parents, families, and actually club staff as well. Third pillar being sort of really looking after that aftercare. If all you've ever known is elite football, and all of a sudden then you come out of that, what do? I'm taking my 19-year-old self when my father passed away. What do I do from next? So we basically manage exit trials. We put them in talent ID days. We put them in touch with FIFA agents that we know are trustworthy and represented in the right possible way. We put them in the limelight and network them with scouts. We're giving the best chance of not dropping off the football life cycle too early. And then the last one is all about sort of administrational burdens towards the club. A lot of coaches, a lot of clubs we spoke to have said it's 75% admin, 25% coaching and doing the actual practical stuff. So we wanted to try and take away a bit of that manual errors and bring a sort of an automated, streamlined process to the clubs. And that's where we feel we want to take the app. We want to go bigger. We want to go better. We had a fantastic meeting with a championship side. I can't mention who it is just now. And we wanted to pioneer with this championship football club, former Premier League club as well. And we want them to be the pioneers of this and really work together on an industry recognized program that is helping players through their life cycle of being a professional footballer, and then looking at pathways in education, looking at jobs and roles within football as well, and giving them, never having to have the player sit there and go, what do I do now? Well, tell you what, come and speak to Daryse. We'll give you all the information and advice and guidance you need to move to the next step. It's free to download on iOS and Android. We believe it should be accessible to everybody. And And, there's other aspects to what we do with Daryse. But in a nutshell, a showcase talent performance app.
Yeah, and we'll have that link in the show notes. And so very, very excited for what that is, especially the elite player aftercare part. I know we had Jonathan Van Horn on earlier, well, actually last season. And, he talked about a lot about that elite player aftercare as well. Didn't call it that exactly, but he has talking to the players, and it's a huge, huge part of it. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a big piece for all of us in the game, whether they're players or coaches or whatever. It's nice to not have to navigate it on your own. And through, Dan, kind of through your playing career, let's get into you a little bit as well. Tell us from your playing career, what was kind of a defining moment within the game of football, and how did it kind of impact you and kind of develop who you are now in the career that you have? Like, what was that defining moment within the game of football for you?
Yeah, really, really good question, Paul. I think it was probably later on in life. When I was young, I was a winger, silky, quick. I was
silky. That's a word we don't use enough here in the States, by the way. Sorry, but
we got to use that. We got to use that more.
Yeah. Sorry, Dan. I couldn't let that go. That's awesome.
Yeah. The silky skills that they used to call it. That was, I was obsessed with Ronaldinho at Barcelona when I was a kid. I actually used to wear a Barcelona top underneath my kit. And I always played off the left. I was right-footed, but everyone actually thought I was left-footed because I could use both, to be fair. But I just love cutting inside and having shots. And naturally, I was just, I was fitter than everybody else. My dad was a defender, and he said if I had the skills that you have, I would have made it. That's what he always used to say to me. But he was in the army. He was mad into his fitness, and he made me go running so much. I still to this day hate going running. But I would, we had a manager when I played non-league a little bit later on in life, and the guy was in the military, and he actually knew my dad, funny enough, and he was so big on fitness, and he used to call it the 12-minute run, and you would sprint for 12 minutes, and I kid you not, I became that fit, I could last the distance, and I was lapping everybody. But the defining moment for me is when my legs actually went, I wasn't that quick anymore, and I started drifting in field a little bit. I started being from playing as a winger, as like an attacking midfielder, and I ended up sort of just generally started drifting back to the point where it was like a central midfielder. And I think I signed for a club called Everton LR, probably about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. And I just became very vocal on the pitch all of a sudden. I was quite a vocal guy, but I ended up just having this mass understanding of every position on the pitch. And that was a contribution of obviously playing at different levels, speaking to different people, going through coaching, going through the scouting aspect, listening to people from all walks of life, and then I'm just a football fan. I watch football. It doesn't matter who it is. I will watch whatever league, whoever's playing. It doesn't matter if it's male or female. I'll watch it. And I just had this massive sense of I could actually play in every position because I knew the roles and the responsibilities of that position. And it was when a manager of mine called Mark Robinson, probably one of the best managers I had. This guy was like, it was like a no frills Pep Guardiola. That's what I would say. He had the know-how and the tactical know-how how to get the best out of players, but he also had that man management where he would put your arm around you. And he would say, I remember one season came up to me and said, Dan, I'm going to make you captain next year. And we're coming to the end of the season, and I was like, wow, okay. And it was just a sense of responsibility and leadership at that point where I think from the jobs I was in, you had to be resilient. Recruitment is cutthroat. You had to be resilient, regardless of who you were, what type of person you were. If you were introvert, extrovert, you had to be resilient because you're on a roller coaster. Your ups and downs in terms of your sales, it was ridiculous. And you had people who were very old school, chipping away at you every single day. You had to be mentally resilient. And I think because I came from a very high level of football, the confidence and the resilience and the mentality I had massively helped me. And I always kind of went into sort of like team leader roles and manager's role because I loved the coaching aspect to it. And I always took from the bad managers I had, the lessons learned of how not to be a manager. And I was just, I implemented that. And then this defining moment as I got this captaincy, and I just had this sense of, I have to look after the team. I will run for a brick wall. I will, if someone's tackled somebody hard, I'm going on that player. I'm going hard on that player just to know that they can't do that to my teammates. But then all of a sudden it was like, I had this like defining moment where I just remember people just naturally respected me because I didn't overpromise and underdeliver. I didn't promise something I couldn't actually, physically deliver on. And I was always there for people. I always respected people and listened to people. And it was a case of best practices from other people. I put that into my day-to-day life. And it's the same with football. I wanted to let my feet do the talking, but I want to be a leader on the pitch. I wasn't, telling people what to do. I'd go and do it and then, bring the team with me to go and do it. If we're chasing down a ball in the 89th minute and we're winning 1-0, I need the striker to go, the winger to go, the centre midfielder to go. We went as a team. And it was the same in sort of when I was in the head of employability for one of my old companies. We tackled issues and fires together. I remember going into this one business and be like, right, you sit here because this team is yours. Then that team, they're the teaching team in apprenticeships. You don't really speak to them. This team, we don't even know who them teams are, but we don't speak to them either. And I was like, there was like the divide of the teams. I was just like, why is that? And then I got into like the sort of under the bonnet of the business a little bit. I was like, well, no, they're not speaking to them. They're not speaking to them. So the lack of efficiency wasn't there. So what I always did in terms of football, business, leadership is I brought everybody together. The more people in terms of speak to each other to try and get the result, the solution quicker, and with quality, was actually making sure everybody knew who I were and I knew their roles and responsibilities, and I helped them move and guide them in the right direction. And I always thought that was really important. Playing at a decent level, younger age, to be fair, Paul, I think I was quite naive. I thought I was going to make it as a footballer. I think one thing I've learned massively is you always need a plan B, whatever that looks like. I think you should find something that you're good at and definitely, go the full distance with it and put all your heart and soul into it, but prepare for the worst to happen. I probably have one of the worst stories, I think, in terms of my friends, 2 broken legs and a loss of a parent at a very critical moment of potentially signing the first year pro. I learned a lot of lessons on my time. But yeah, I would say probably about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, having that captain's armband for the first time in my career really put a really good standpoint of who I wanted to be as a leader.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, it's interesting you say that because I was assuming it was going to be the 2 broken legs and losing your father, because that's obviously major. But the lessons you learned from that captain band, that responsibility, but also, as it built up into that. I am curious, what is the term used when you lose the silkiness and you go and start moving back into the central midfield? What's that term called?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's actually a word for me. Just being,
I'm just
being,
joking.
yeah. I mean, my nickname's Rusty, so maybe
I
it's
hope
just the
it's
fact is, yeah, it actually is. It actually is Rusty.
yeah.
And that was even when I was decent and silky. But yeah, I think a lot of people say, yeah, the legs have gone.
All right. So now you are working, as we talked. We've alluded to this. We've talked about it a little bit, but you're working with UA92. You're the Apprenticeships and Bootcamps operations director. So there's a lot of words there. So what does that mean, first of all? And then UA92 claims to be deliberately different. So what is UA92? It's cool that the class of 92 did it, but if it's just because the class of 92 does something doesn't make it worthwhile, as much as they played very well for many years. But what is UA92? What does make it deliberately different, and what are you doing for them?
Yeah, what a place to be. I've recently joined 2 months in, and every day is different, and it's a breath of fresh air really, because it's a university, so University Academy 92. Founded by the class of 92, but also co-founded by the class of 92 and co-founded by Lancaster University, one of the one of the best universities here in the UK. The motto being deliberately different. I love it. I never heard that before, and it's giving students the flexibility to understand that you can actually go to university and not have that traditional way of learning and have the burdens of different sort of criteria to get to. So there's 4 different degrees to go down. There's IT, media, business, and sports. And obviously we being linked with Gary Neville and the class of '92. Obviously there's links to Man United and Salford City, but it's not a football university academy. It's not an academy associated to football. It's a university. They have an AM and a PM timetable. It's aimed at sort of disprivileged people, or probably in sort of areas. If you're a single parent, you've got children and you've got a part-time job in the evening, and normal universities, they have classrooms and lessons just all over the place. Whereas what we do is very structured. It's either in the morning or it's the afternoon. So it's being flexible, tapping into the social mobility aspect of what we do and making sure it's accessible to everybody in a nutshell, really. You're not learning on your degree 3 different things at once. You set on one module and you learn that until you move on to the next one. So you're getting the full submerged in-depth knowledge of that module, of that aspect of your degree, until you move on to the next one, until you're feeling confident and ready to move on to the next one as well. A big part of what I do there is completely brand new. So I'm building the whole entire strategy for apprenticeships and digital boot camps. So they now are a training provider for a DevOps level 4 apprenticeship, which has a massive merge between sort of web development, operational sense, cybersecurity, data, and cloud merged into it. And we have a really good tailored approach to working with customers. You tell us what we want and we'll tailor to your pain points and your skill gaps, basically. And I'm basically going to all the cool businesses out there. So KPMG, Man United, and looking to see how we can utilize recruitment roadmaps to bring on new people for them to hire, or actually upskilling existing staff within that organization. And then in terms of the digital boot camps area, we get funding from the government to give people a chance to think, you know what, I fancy change. I know there's a massive talent shortage in IT, maybe in data, cloud, cybersecurity, or web development. So we actually do these free courses, either part-time or full-time, for them to go and learn data analytics for 10 weeks full-time, Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. till 5 p.m. Or if it's too much and you want to go part-time for 16 weeks, it's 3 till 6. And effectively, that talent pool is so unique. It's so diverse. We did an impact report most recently, and fantastic results in terms of the gender. We had 50-50 split on the gender, so the female and male on the course was phenomenal. And then the ethnical diverse talent pool was 77 was BAME and 23 was white. Again, that area of social mobility and the D&I initiatives were fantastic for our customers, for our clients. So we were helping them tap into that talent pool and recruit these individuals for free. And effectively, what we wanted to do was just make it different, make it deliberately different on purpose to recognize that you might think you're not able to go to university because it's going to cost you thousands of pounds. Most recently, Gary Neville did a scholarship for two young students and donated £60,000 between them, so 30k each. And you should have heard the stories behind these 2 students. What one girl was a carer for her mum. She just didn't have a kind of social life, and she was just looking after her mum all the time. And for her to now go and get a degree and have everything in terms of the travel, the food, the books, the equipment, just to be paid for, and they agreed to be paid for the next 3 years, was phenomenal. And then the young man, wow, what a story he had. He was in the foster system. This guy had such a rough life. And you're just like, wow, it couldn't have happened to a nicer two people. And it's things like that in terms of my job and the partnerships team, is to go and work with these big companies who want to give bursaries and want to give funding for our scholarship initiatives to help people basically find the next generation of talent and students out there as well.
Yeah, there's some great work on there, obviously, and obviously, like everything else in this show, we'll have a link in the show notes to so people can find out more information about what UA92 is doing. And just I learned a lot right there too. Just I had over like a 30,000 foot view of everything that maybe I thought was going on there, but man, what's some amazing stuff that you guys are doing. And I'm sure, like you said, a breath of fresh air. It kind of takes you on the other side of some of the things that are going on in the world outside of football and overlap a little bit with football. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Phil, anything to add to that before we move on to the next thing?
Nope. I think we're good there. I think the last couple questions, we always say on this show, all good things must come to an end. And again, I think that most good things need to come to an end. Some things maybe don't ever end. But in this instance, this does need to come to an end. And the last couple questions we ask everybody. The first one is how do you use the lessons you learned directly from the game? Of football, as we call it in the UK, in your personal relationships, in your parenting, in your with your, as you say, as with the missus, and outside the game, right? What does that look like? What does that look like? As far as those lessons you learned directly from the game of football.
Yeah, there's spinning plates all over, isn't there? In terms of what we're currently doing as parents, as coaches, as scouts, and a lot of people, I think assume the defining moment, like you mentioned earlier, was the two broken legs and the passing of the father. I'm a guy that kind of believes in, well, it is what it is, and everything happens for a reason. I had to grow up quickly because I was a young dad. And I was, my mum at the time was dealing with her own personal issues. She kind of sort of moved away, met somebody new who's my stepdad, amazing guy. Couldn't thank him enough for being the guy that he is. But I guess that defining moment of having that captain's armband, like I was saying to Paul earlier, was putting a lot into perspective. That being 19 was probably the start of my journey. Before that was, it was childhood. It was, there's a lot of experiences in there, but I had a very good life. And I'm not saying that I didn't learn anything from that, but mine came quick in a sense that I had to grow up very quickly. And then I guess that built me into the person who can, I have a lot of people that respect me and trust me because of the person that I am today. And generally because I generally believe that the defining moment as a captain is I walk into a room, I want to be the captain of this team. I want to lead them to success. I want to be the best person, the best version I can be, and then give that back to the people. And, the walks of life now in terms of what football has helped me with, yeah, competitiveness, definitely. It doesn't, but also having the resilience to understand that there's going to be challenges in life and you're not always going to get to where you need to be. But what can you do to fight through them sort of challenges, fight through them walls to give you the best chance possible? And just realizing that sometimes things aren't meant to be, but let's have a look at a different pathway. Let's go somewhere else. Let's see if we can go down a different pathway to get to where you need to be. And that's where I look at my life as when I was probably between sort of the age of 8 to 19, my pathway was straight. There was no dipping out of any of the angles. And then all of a sudden it came to the age of 19 and my pathway just became all over the place. But eventually I'm grateful for where I am. I've got two fantastic boys. I've got a great partner. My family are fantastic. And, I'm in a job that I can actually look back and think back, well, this really suits my knowledge of my industry, industry that I've been in terms of IT recruitment and apprenticeships, but also it merges it with the world of football. We get Man United players, we get Salford players coming in to visit and do, work on their plan Bs and their degrees, but then I guess it's the ability and the resilience to manage the scouting, the Daryse, the coaching of, the dad's taxes, as we call it, so helping my son move in the right direction, support my family from a financial aspect of life, and always being there for my friends and my colleagues as well. So when I sort of reference the spinning of the plates, you adapt to change. And I think change sometimes is a good thing. And you just get good at being organized. And I would actually say the one thing I've learned more than anything else in life is being organized in a sense that I can get the maximum amount of efficiency out of the different lanes and channels that I'm in. I get good at spinning plates, basically. But
Yeah.
I think the one thing I will say, Phil and Paul, is I am mentally resilient, but I also know when to be selfish, because you can't spread yourself too thin. You can't give yourself to everybody. And you've got to know when to say stop or when to say no, and actually think, you know what? I need some downtime. I need some me time. And that's what I think a lot of people get to a point where they just want to become yes people or pleasers. And you've got to remember, you've got to look after number one. You've got to look after yourself. Because if you look after yourself, then you can go and do the other things that makes other people happy as well.
Yeah.
That's a
And
really
we
important
talk about
piece
that a
there.
lot. Oh, sorry, Paul.
Yep, sorry, now I was gonna say, yeah.
I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, I don't think that's not selfish at all. Actually, that's the one thing we talk about. We talk about that self-care. It's when to take care of yourself so that you can give to the others, right? It's actually selfish to not do that and to just
Yeah.
not be able to give yourself to other people. Now, it's selfish if you always continually just worry about yourself and don't give it away. But I love that idea of that captaincy, as far as, we talk about this a lot on the show, of leadership truly is cultivating that environment where other people can flourish. Right. And so that idea, whether it's on a soccer team, whether it's in your home, whether it's in an organization, that absolutely is the case. And so what does that look like? And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing I always looked at that picture. I think there was a picture of someone being standing, like it's like Egyptian time. Someone stood on a massive block, and there's someone telling him what to do, and then the leader's actually at the front pulling the the massive block of brick with them, and that stuck with me for a long time. And I always remember thinking everybody's different, and I learned this from managers. One manager would always relate to the lads with a soccer reference, but then wouldn't know how to adapt to the females in the team. And I always just thought, well, let's go down to a more personal level. Let's go and meet them. Let's go and understand who they are. Let's understand a bit about the background. And then not only just that helps you understand who they are, they now get to understand who you are as a person, and your management skills, your leadership skills become, very, there's a big vast of skills in there. And then you just understand that person, how to get the best out of them. So that captaincy, that leading by example, always stuck with me from that time when I got given the captain's armband.
Yeah. Well, Dan, we've had some amazing stuff on this podcast today, and we've got one more question for you, but just want to thank you for your time. And I know you've got to start up the dad taxi pretty soon for the evening, as you are over there across the pond. But one final question for you, Dan, as we kind of head our way out of here. But what have you watched, read, or listened to that has most impacted your thinking on how football explains life and leadership?
Oh, good question. So there was actually probably about a year ago, maybe a year or two ago, there was actually the insight to Crystal Palace. So I think they called it the boot room. I can't remember what it's called now, but it was really insightful, and it basically gave you an inside sort of concept of how academy players adapt to potentially getting contracts and getting released, and seeing what other families were like with their children. There was one kid who had a bit of a bad injury. The club was sort of humming already. Let's give him a 2-year contract. The kid was like 11 years old, and he'd come back from this injury. And I honestly kid you not, that the enthusiasm he had straight after school, bag on the floor, round to the back garden, got the football out, and just played football for hours and hours and hours. And the biggest thing, the biggest learning curve on that was, how different parents dealt with different situations, how different coaches dealt with the situations, and just having the level of knowledge of how to speak to people, the communication on from a coach, from a head of recruitment to a family to a player, became more apparent that they need continuous personal development within the coaches, within helping families deal with this sort of kind of news. And that's a lot where the sort of the EPA, the Daryse Elite Player Aftercare kind of was born from. personal reasons on that. You know, I lost a family member due to suicide, so there's a lot of personal reasons on that. And then doing the reading into all of the elite player aftercare, there was a young lad who played for Man City, took his own life because he got released. And then it was just, I don't know if you've seen it on Amazon, you know, the insights to like Arsenal Football Club, Tottenham Hotspurs, all watching all of that, seeing actually how the elite players deal with it. Because for me, it's understanding what they're going through right now, what they're potentially learning, how the coaches deal with people. It just gives you that insight to how to potentially have the elite mindset of having to have to deal with the elite pressure that is out there. So for me, it's actually getting the inside information from the elite teams. How are they doing it, to almost passing that information to other people, but not in snippets, because people can't deal with that sort of elite mindset, that elite pressure. You've got to sort of kind of prepare them. You know, that's the word I would say. We need to prepare the next generation to be as resilient as possible.
Yeah, those documentaries are fantastic, and I watched most of them. I still have to. I guess there's one on Newcastle. I got to check that one out. There's a few others that are coming out, and I'm a sucker for all of them. I've been watching the golf ones and the tennis ones, and there's the one on the Florida Gators football team with Urban Meyer. You were talking about militaristic approach to some of these teams. He definitely was that. So I strongly recommend not just watching the ones on global football, American soccer, but all the other sports too, because there's so much to learn from in those things. So totally agree with that. But thank you so much, Dan. I know you need to get rolling, but this time goes so fast when we're doing these things. These are so much fun. But thank you so much. Appreciate you, and appreciate the growing friendship we have.
Yeah, Phil, amazing. So I was so happy to be invited here. Definitely enjoyed it today, and meeting yourself, Paul. Fantastic person, human being. Yeah, thank you for your time. Really looking forward to it. And this weekend, back on the road, like we say, with the dad's taxis. So it's going to start in the next 15, 20 minutes. I wouldn't change it for the world. My son gets to do the thing that he loves the most. So let's do it. Let's help the next generation of talent get to where they need to be.
100%. 100%. And you're a good judge of character too, because you realized in the last hour that Paul is a great human being. So I definitely appreciate that. So, folks, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you for the download, but also thank you for just again, if you're listening to this podcast, you're thinking about these things, and if you're thinking about these things, you're using them in your life. And I just do pray that you do use these things, not just listen and be on your way, but actually think about them, process, talk to other people about them, share this with other people. It's the best way to get this out there. It's the best way to get people thinking about these really important topics we're talking about on this show. So with all that we talk about on this show, it's in the show notes. You can go check that out, howsoccerexplainsleadership.com. If you want to check out Warrior Way and what Paul and Marcy are doing down there in Waco, you can do that. That link is in the show notes. Coaching the bigger game. We're not, it's been on the shelf for a bit for various reasons, but we are going to be kicking that off in the next few months. And if you want to do anything with disc training or other leadership development stuff that I've been talking about on the show, you can reach out to me. My email is in the show notes as well. As always, folks, we hope that you're taking everything you're learning from this show and you are using it to be a better parent, a better spouse, a better friend, a better leader, a better coach, better in all that you do. And you continue to remind yourself that soccer does explain life and leadership. Thanks a lot. Have a great couple weeks.